Hello everyone. Today we are going to see two things which are function and error handling. So first we will start with functions, then we will do some practice questions on functions, then uh, error handling, and then some questions for error handling as well. So first, why we should even use functions. Like we in last video we talked about how we have to sometimes repeat our single code. For example, we talked in for this in loops and conditional statements, where we have to repeat a certain code block again and again. Instead of writing that code block again and again, we can only write it once and then use it again and again in our code base whenever we need it and as whenever we required it. So now we are going to see the syntax, how we can make a function, the data type, how to return a data type. So basically a function is the syntax of function, if you see, is just like this, then return or print statement or whatever you write here. So this is the basic syntax of a function, that this this def keyword used to define is used to define a function. Then you have to write function name, after that your arguments, then you have to write your code block. Remember one thing, whenever inside a function you are defining some arguments, such as for an example a, b and c, there is you can declare as many as argument you want, but there is one thing, if you are defining any and giving a default value to any variable, then you have to uh, define or give a value to every single variable to the left side, right side of that. So I also need to define c. If I just write a, b, comma b equals to 1 and comma c, it's not going to work. It will throw an error, a syntax error. So you have to define c as well. So now we are not defining any of them. Now you can write anything here as your requirement. uh, to see how a function works, we are going to make a even number, even function. We are going to give it a name even. We're going to take one variable, we will use it to check if a number is even or not. So let's just you can write return or print. I am using return. So now you can call this function. For example, let's take a bigger number. Here it is. So let's just run this file, python 3. Let me just so what does it says? No such file. Oh, I just wrote it wrong. Let me see the spelling just once. It's functions. So here it is. Now here you can see it says false because it's not even value, it's an odd number. So now you have get the point that how a function is you. For example, now take a, what I'm doing is I'm writing 1,000 line of code here, and I have to check for these even number again and again. So I don't have to use an if statement again and again. I can just directly call this function as many times as I want. There are some other things in a function as well, which can be your data types. You can define what type of data type a function will return. you can define it as, for example, we are making a change. Instead of writing a boolean value, we are going to return a, and here what a has to be, you can even define a, which is going to be an int. So what does it means? This function here is going to take an int value as a and going to return a string. So now let's just see. uh, Here false. Now this false is a string. You can even check it as like so here we are, here how you can define the return data type or the variable data type, argument data type. It For a smaller function, you won't going to notice that much of a difference by using it, but when you are working on a larger code base, it's going to be very helpful for other person to understand what this function do, what does it return. So let's just move ahead and make a little bit of a difficult function. So we are going to see, let's just take a function which creates, not create, let's just take a function which is going to find a value. Let's just do a binary function for a binary search function. So give it an array as num. Data type is list, comma. Then we have a value target, which is going to be an int, and it is going to return an int. So let's return it. Let's just take found equals to -1. So if we found our target value, we will change this found to a positive value, which will be our 1. So let's just start. Let's just take a low and high. We have already talked about this thing in our tuple video. This is the unpacking. If you don't know, let me just tell you. In Python, just like C, you can write multiple variables in a single line and define them there. You don't need to change the line again and again. So for while low is less or equals to high, then we will calculate our mid value, which is low plus high divided by double divided by 2. Using double divide, so we only get the coefficient, complete coefficient, not with any decimal value, because we can't find a decimal an index with a decimal value. So we are going to use now if num mid index from num is equals to our t here, then we will simply change the value of found equals to 1 if num of mid is less than our value t. What does it means? Let me just make an array and then we will see. For example, take our value was 7 and our mid showed us a value 4, which is less than our target value. So what does it mean? It means all the values before our mid are also smaller than our target, because for the binary search your array have to be sorted. So now if you take a look here, these four values are not useful for us, so we can remove them and only use this part of the list for the further operation. So let's just, and how we can do it? So this is our leftmost index, and what defines our leftmost index is our low value. So let's just redefine low as mid plus 1. We don't need to check mid again because we already know mid is less. Or else. So now either our mid value have to be equal, less, or the only case remaining is when it's greater than our target value. So if our mid value was 4 and our mid value is 8, then we know we don't need that much value, so we can remove all of the list from our right side of that mid value. And how we can remove that? Because what defines our leftmost index? High define our leftmost index. So here we are going to change the variable high to mid minus 1, and then we are going to return found. So now we have a binary search function, a even function. So let's just call it. Let's define an array first. Take any number, but it have to be sorted. Then we are taking a target value, which is, let's just take 98. So if binary num equals to, if this statement returns true, then we will print element found, else we will print not found. So let's just run it and see if it works. It says function is missing one, or we have to give target value as well. So now you can see it says, oh, I just made a mistake. I described a value here, so I have to write a little small thing when value is greater than 0, because now it won't work. So here now you can see not found. Why not found? Because this value, if you can see, it doesn't exist in this list. And how our binary function works, we already talked about the binary search in one of our video, but let's just talk about again here, so you can easily understand how it works. So how a binary function works? So for example, as we already know, we can go linearly in an array to search an element, but there is also another way. The first thing for a binary search that have to be true is your array have to be sorted either in ascending or descending order. Depending on the order, you have to make certain changes to your function as well. Then you have in this function, first we will define two values, one from the either our leftmost index and then our rightmost index. So our this low points to this value which is on the leftmost side, then high points to this value. If you see the value and put them then see that same index in the list. Now we will calculate mid. Once we have mid, we will take the value of mid index from that array and we will check it against uh, our target value. If target value is greater than the value we get from the array by using mid, then we know that array have is sorted. For example, take here our target value is 64 and we got 5 from the mid. Then we already know if 5 is less than 64, these values which is 1 2 3 and 4 are also going to be less than 64, so we don't need them. So if we only include these remaining values, that will be going the in the if we just remove these values, the the remaining values will take less time to find that value. And if the value is greater than, for example, take here our target value is 4 and we get 5. So now we know if 5 is greater than 4, then all the values to the right of 5 are also greater than 4. So remove them as well. So here we are doing one thing, we are cutting down the list until we are only left with one single value. So here you can see first, and our target value is 90. Let's just change it to something which is present. Here let's say 5, not 5, let's just take 2. So first what it will do give you, first it will give you value 4 or 5 I guess. Then you will check again, you will say nope, all these values are greater than our target value, so let's just remove them. Now you are left with these 4 values. Now you will again run the same loop, you will get mid value. For example, you get 3. 3 is also larger than 2, so you will remove all these, and now you are left with these 2 values, which is 1 and 2. You will find when you will find mid value, you will find 1, but 1 is also less than 2, so you will remove 1 as well. Then you are only left with 2. So using binary search, we are only dividing the list unless we are left with only one element. For a smaller array just like this, you may think this thing is too much to do or too much complex, but for a larger array with tens of thousands of elements, binary search is better than uh, the linear search. And you can also say that a binary search is more of a standard approach in comparison to the linear search. So now let's just work on functions a bit more. Let's just see a note. Let me show you some practice questions you can do for functions. So here they are. Here they are for error handling, I guess. Just remove this. Okay. So now you have them here. just put it, copy it, okay, remove. So here are these questions. Please give some time to these questions, and if you are feeling that you can't do these questions right now on your own, then let's just you can skip the next 10 minutes of the video. After 10 minutes I will be doing all these questions. Yeah, I guess all of you are done with the questions now. So let's just try to do these questions. First we have is to create a greeting function which will print hello in the name given by the user. So let's just try to make this function. It would be very simple, not going to take that much of the time. So let's just start with the first question. We'll give this name. Is there any greet name is given? So let's just create greet name given by the user. Let's just put this variable as user underscore name. This name is going to be a string. Will this function returns anything or not? So we can either set this function to return anything or not, but we are not setting to return anything, so it will return none. And what it will do, it will print user underscore name, and what it have to print is hello. It's just hello. And an exclamatory mark. I'm printing this time with the F string, but if you don't know, if you think you can't write to F string, you can simply just write a string hello, then comma, and then username. So that's all you have to write in the first function. It's just simply 2 lines, or you can also use a return as you want. So let's just move to the second question, which is default argument write power base, then returns that return base raised to the exponent. So we have to create a function that gonna take two values. One of them will have a default argument, and this function will return base raised to the exponential power. So let's just make the second function. Let's give it a name, base plus exponent. What was the second parameter? Exponent. So let me just write exponent. And exponent have its default value set to 2. If you don't give two parameters to the function, it will have this exponential value by default as 2. If you give, it will change it. So now you have to return, or to make it more easy, let's just take another variable first, then base double multiply exponent, and then just return that value. So here we are done with our function. We only have to return the value and nothing else. If you just take a look at all of these questions are very easy to do, or max 2 to 3 lines of code you have to write here. There's not that much to do. After these questions, we also have another set of practice questions. I will share those questions at the end of this video as well. So please try to do those questions. Our third question is of a return value. Write is even number that returns true if a number is even, otherwise false. This question is exactly the same thing we just did in the start of the function video. That's all you have to write. Just remove these string. These are not string, these are boolean values now. So this third question was very simple. You only had to write these two lines. These are four lines in total. Or if you can even make it much shorter with just ending this line with one. You can write return true if a modulus 2 double equals to 2, else return false. So this one line will do the same thing as those four lines. There's nothing different here. If you look closely, it just says return true if the condition is met, otherwise false. So instead of writing three lines, I just wrote it in one. And this is one of the best thing about Python, that you can compress two or three lines into one and they will still work. Now here we are not returning a string, so let's just remove these data types. So now the function is done. That's all we have to do in the third question. Let's just move to the fourth one. Fourth one is call profile. Okay, a function name profile using these things, using explicit keyword argument out of order. So here what does this line means? You have to understand this thing first. So let me just make this function first. The name is profile, and it is going to take three arguments, which are name, age, and address, I guess. City, not address, city. So let's just, because we are not doing anything inside the inside this function, we have to do it with the function calling. So let's just return none. So what we have to do, till this function, the thing we have done is whenever we define an argument, we give a parameter at the time of function calling, those two are in the same order. For example, here we defined a list and an integer, then we gave a list and then an integer. So if you take a look, the order of these values are matching. But how we can give values even though the order is not matching? So this is what we are going to see now. So here, first name, which is equals to, let's just put anything, let's put Alice. Then we have to print age, let's put anything, 24. Then the order have to be different, so let's just put city before the age. For city you can put anything, let's just write Delhi. So even if you write like this, there is nothing wrong with it. So let me just print out. Also add a space. So you see here, if I have used f string, it would be so easy to print it and put it in a nice way even in code. But so that's why you should use f string instead of using commas and then putting space as a string. Let's just run it, and now you can see, even when the order of parameters and argument was different, the output is still the same. Output, we are still we can still provide an output, we can still process it. So that's all you have to do this time. It's not about the function, it was about the function calling. So let's just see this question. If you look closely, it was clearly written here that you have to call with the arguments out of order. So let's just move to another question, which is arbitrary positions. Write some whole numbers that accept many quantity of numbers and then return their sum. So how we can do this one? It's very simple. So if you look at the question, there is hint is already given to you, which is this is what you are going to name your function, this is how you are going to define the argument, and this is how you are going to calculate the sum. So let's just move to the fifth question, which is diff. Let's just name it sum. Put some numbers here, then return, not a return, let's just use print here. So let's just call this function. So you use asterisk with an argument when you are not aware how many uh, arguments your function have to accept. Such as in example of sum, you don't know, you can either send 10 numbers or 2 numbers or 1,000 numbers. So you are not sure at the time of making this function, so you can use asterisk. Otherwise you have to make function different, you have to make different functions for every set of number. For like 2 numbers are different function, for 3 are different, for 4, and this will increase our code length up by a huge margin. So let's just run it. It says sum takes at most 2 arguments, but 6 was given. So what we can do here, let's just use args. Same here. It says sum takes 2 element at most. Let's just write it like this, and now you can see it was just, I forgot to remove the I just mistakenly put the asterisk here as well. You don't need to put the asterisk as well. Now this variable will contain all the values in it, and it will move those values like a tuple. So you can easily use sum and then average or minimum maximum function over there. You can also do min here. You can also use min and max as well. So let's just put some back here. There is one more good thing about functions, that before calling a function, those functions are just there as in form of text. They won't do anything. They won't interfere with anything else in your code. Just remember, when you are working with functions, there are things such as global and local scope of variables. Just be sure about those, that you are not interfering with any of those scope. We will also talk about those things in our future video. So first, let's just move to the next question, which is arbitrary keywords. Write print user data that loops through and print all the key value pairs passed in. So how we can do it is pretty simple. We have already done this thing in the above question, so I don't think we need to do it again. So let's just move to the another question, which is a lambda function. So we haven't talked about a lambda function, so let's just also talk about the lambda function, which is a lambda function. So what's a lambda function? A lambda function is almost like a normal function, but the thing is, it is used to define a very simple function. You can define that in a single line. You don't need to write anything else. You can just use for a lambda function how we can write a lambda function. So a function name, give this function a name, then use a keyword lambda, then in lambda we are using variable x here is the argument, and we have to use, for example, like this. So for a simple function such as we have to make a function for multiplying the number by 2, that's all we have to do. But here if you look, creating this function will be much more of a work as compared to this. But remember, lambda is only used to define small logics. You can't write a full function in lambda. If you have to go for any complex or longer functionality, just use a def keyword and write a function instead of doing the lambda thing. So as we here defined a function with which will return the double value of our parameter. Also, when you use y here, there is no limit on the variable name. Let's just give it a name. Let's just call it double. Then we will print double. Let's just say it 4. So if I run it, now you can see we are getting double value of 4, double value of 2, which is 4. So now you can understand what this function do. For it will take this value and we get x equals to 2. Then what it will do, it will first do this calculation. Now we have our output as 4. Now it will return it to the print statement, and now print statement will print 4. So let's just move to the next question. The next question is scope check. Write a function that try to modify a global variable without using the global keyword. Observe what happened. So as we just talked about the uh, scope of a variable, how can and what are scope? Just talk about scope as well. We are talking about scope. So what is a scope? For example, take like we have a variable equal to 0, then we make a function, call it, let's just, we already have even, let's just call it odd. Odd is taking a number as n, then checking if it, let me just copy paste it from here. So now we have a function for not this one, it's just a equals to n plus 2 return a. So here if you look, we are using same variable two times in a single code. First here we are defining a equals to 0, then we are defining a equals to n into 2. So what do you think what will happen? Will this function change the value of this a? So let me show you how. Let's remove this print statement, and then is there any other function code? Let's just remove this one. So let's just first write odd 2x and give it value a, then just see what is the value of a, and even before the function calling, let's print a. Now you can see it says 0 0 0. Let here we gave the wrong value. Let's just write it like that. Here you can see it's 9 0 90 and 0. So what happened is that this function is like a this function itself is like a very different code block. It won't interfere with anything else. So this function doesn't even know that a variable name a exists outside this function, so it can't change. You can give it any name inside a function, even if already exists in that code base, it won't interfere with that. It happens in some cases and you will realize it, but will be an overlap, but you don't have to worry about it or for most of the time. So now you know, because here the a is a global variable, because if you see the alignment of a, it's defined in the global code space. So any function, any loop can access value a, but not this function unless you give this function specifically the value of a. Here this a is totally different from this a. Both of them doesn't have any connection between them. So just because of this, you can see like the value of it doesn't change. This a, and this a only exists inside of that function. When you give it a number, it will store that number for that particular instant in a, then return a. When it will give output, this print statement won't receive the value of a, it will just simply receive the output. So this statement isn't aware of that a holds some value here. That's all about the scope of a variable. You can also use a global variable from these alignments in a function, and to access that you have to write global variable As you can see, it is also written in the question that, oh, that you without using the global keyword. Oh, I've just so uh, now this A is this A. So if you make to any change to it here, it will also reflect those changes. So now you can see we defined the global A. Now this function also have the value of global A and control over this value, a variable. So now if we write A equals to n into 2 and return this value, we will get this 90 here, but we also made the change to value of A. So value of A has been changed globally. Without using this line, we will still have value of A equals to 0 outside this function. So now let's just move to the ninth question. The ninth question we have is recursion. Write a regressive function factorial that returns the factorial of n. So now here we have a function where we have to use some logic and calculation. So let's just define a function. So we have n. N can be anything from a negative number to any positive number, anything on the real a real number line. So n can be 0, n can be 1 as well, but if you know the factorial of 0 is 1, factorial of 1 is also 1, and factorial of 2 is 2, then from 3 it becomes 6. So if you take a look at these two numbers, factorial is just 1. You take a look at 2, 2 is the factorial. You have to start making a logic from 6. So let's just put this in our code and see how we can write this logic. I'm not removing it. We will write one by one and fulfill all these conditions, and then we will remove them one by one. For example, if n is equals to 0, return what we have to return 1. If n is equals to 1, all you have to do is return 1. If n is equals to 2, then return 2. Now we have a else case. So now what else case will be? If number is greater than 2, because we have already defined all the conditions for 2 till 2, sorry. So now in else case what we will see, let's just define one variable first. Let's just take m equals to 1, because we are finding factorial, so we have to initialize one variable as 1. If we are finding anything related to sum, then we will initialize it from 0. So now let's create a loop while n multiply from n and subtract 1 from n. And then return the value of m. So here if you see, m is also a local variable. It doesn't exist outside else loop, else conditional statement. So we are returning m from right here. We are not returning it from the outside of else. And if you see here, these two statement doesn't have to be separative statement. You can simply just write and then m equals this thing. Or if you even want a shorter version, then we can also write a shorter version when we can say return if n is equals to return 1 if n is equals to 1 and not and or n is equals to 0, else not else, use another if statement with it, which will define the value to. Here we have to do or not end. So here is one function for factorial. How it will work? For example, take we have value 5. The value 5 gets, these two conditions will not do anything because 5 doesn't satisfy any of these. So it comes to else. Now m is equals to 1. What happens here is m going the value of m will multiply into n and then will redefine it into m. So m will become m equals to 1 into 5. The value of n decreases by 1. Let's just put here this thing. So now value of n is 4. So now loop runs again. M will become, m is already 5, m will become 4 into 5, and now n will become 3. Now what will happen with m? M will become 20 into 3 and n equals to 2. Now loop runs again. M equals to 60 into 2. Now what n is? N equals to 1. And now value will not change, it will remain same because we are multiplying with 1 now. For one less iteration, you can also just write here n greater than 1. Don't check it till 0, just finish the loop at 1. So this is how we will get our output. In the last loop, m will become 120 and we will return m. So let's just see if our function works or not. Let's just give it 5. Is there any print statement? Yep. Here, let's just print these out. Now here you can see 120 as we just saw in our flow chart that value should came out as 120. Let's just put a bigger value. Let's just put 50 here. Now you have the factorial till 50. Let's just say 9. Then 0. Okay, does it provide any value at the negative number? It says 1, and that's true because the factorial of this number is going to be 1. Let's just say minus 56 is, it still says 1, because if you take a look at our function, values will be there when it's greater than 1. M never satisfy the value, this value will never satisfy the while loop, and M will came back as 1. Our code is working correctly. And there is one thing I would recommend: always try to run your code more and more on the edge cases, because code mostly breaks on the edge cases. So now we have done our ninth question, and let's just try to move to our third question. Sorry, 10th question, not third, which is higher order function apply right twice, that calls function on value, then call function on that result. What it have to do? If you look here, this apply twice function is taking a variable argument as function, then value. So what it will do, it will call a function, and then it says that call function on value, then call function on that result. So what it have to do, we have to use this function, then let me write it. So it's something like we have a even function, we are writing even, and we are giving it value of even function. So what will happen, that this, first of all, this block will execute, and it will provide us a result. It will provide us a result. For example, it gave us a value of something like true. Now this value will goes again into the same function. This is what this question wants us to do, but they want us to do something with a function by the choice of user. So we are not writing a function by owner's own. We have to create a function. So let's just start creating that function. Let's just first not using func, let's just put it to f and y. And what we have to do is just f and y. This is what we have to do, and then just call apply. Let's go twice, f and y. Now you can, instead of f, you can write a name of function then, and give it a value. For example, we are going with the double. If here if you see, we are going with the value of double, and for value let's just give 2. Here we will print it. Here. So now the output we should get should be 16. Uh, 8. Not, oh, because we are not going for double, we are just multiplying it by 2. So if we go for, let's just keep it till 2, but not just use exponential on it. We already have exponential function up there. So that's how we have to do. We can even store name of a function inside an argument. This is what this question have to tell, and this is already done. So now we are done with functions. Now from next video we will move to error handling. Error handling is pretty useful when in cases when you are bumped into an unexpected error. Uh, for example, you are using divide function and someone gave a value 0. So now you know with 0 you can't divide anything, and it's going to throw an error. So instead of throwing that error on terminal and then you telling the compiler is telling you that you can't do it, you can use a error message which will tell you very clearly that what's the problem in your code, so you can easily fix it. Not only you, when other some other person is looking at the code written by you, they can, it also gonna help with them as well. Plus error, if you include error handling, that's make your code more much better in terms of quality. So from next video we will see how we can uh, work work with error handling. Then we will imply error handling with functions. So now I'm going to attach some questions at the end of the video. Please take a look at them.